The Going More Ultra was a last man standing style race. So it consists of a 4.2-mile loop that starts every hour on the hour. So you have that whole 60 minutes to complete the loop. And if you don't finish that in that time frame, you is what's known as a DNF, did not finish. So the race keeps going. There's no end distance. It goes until there's only one person left running. But I think a lot of my mental toughness comes from carrying my brother's memory with me, like, as I run. I feel like I have the best mental clarity during my runs, after my runs, and I feel like some of my best ideas and thoughts come out when I'm running.
Welcome to the fourth ever episode of the Fall and Rise podcast, a podcast about real people, real setbacks, and relentless comebacks. Today, we're joined with a very special guest, Dalton. Please introduce yourself and tell people a bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on the show, guys. So my name's Dalton Mullin. I was born in Cornwall, Ontario, raised in northern New York. Spent my time going through high school playing three different sports: soccer, hockey, lacrosse. I used to do anything outdoors. So like me and my brother would go fishing like nonstop every single day, ride dirt bikes, things like that. After I graduated, I joined the Navy, did about 8 years, had two deployments during that time frame. Transitioned out of the Navy at the end of 2022, started going to school in TCU down here in Fort Worth, Texas, and picked up ultra running along the way.
Epic. And for those people who don't know what ultra running is ultra marathons, and an ultra marathon being any distance you ran over a marathon. So recently you did the BPN G1M Ultra, as can be seen from your hat and your top. Tell people a little bit about
Yeah.
that and what that was like for you and what it is.
So the Going More Ultra was a last man standing style race. So it consists of a 4.2-mile loop that starts every hour on the hour. So you have that whole 60 minutes to complete the loop. And if you don't finish that in that time frame, you is what's known as a DNF, did not finish. So the race keeps going. There's no end distance. It goes until there's only one person left running. So it was a really cool experience. The entire team hosted an amazing event. The race went pretty viral on social media. A lot of people were tuning in. Kim and Kendall, they were some amazing people and even better athletes. Those guys battled it out for, I think it was 238 miles or something like
That's
that.
nuts.
It's absolutely crazy. And they're only young
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
I think they're like 21 years old.
yeah, I think. Yeah, 21, I
So
believe.
something like that. It's
That's
amazing.
crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
How did you get on doing it?
So before the race, the furthest distance I ran was 31 miles, so about a 50K. And I did that just in training. The race, it was hot, and it was a scorcher down there. So it was down in Austin, Texas. The heat index was 103 degrees. That's Fahrenheit. So there yeah, there was like no shade throughout the course. It was just hot. It was miserable. So like a lot of people, myself included, we entered that pain cave really early on in the race. Like I was starting to question if I could keep going around mile 20. But I ended up pushing through. I think I got about 60 miles before I ended up DNFing.
Wow, that's nuts. For our British listeners, that's 40 degrees. So that's hot. That's
Six,
really hot.
60 miles in 40-degree heat. The sun. Did you not get
Yes.
burnt?
No, I didn't actually. So I was wearing a UV t-shirt, and I put on sunscreen. I think two or three times SPF 50. So surprisingly, I didn't get burnt.
Yeah, all die. I mean, like that's pretty extreme conditions to be running in. I mean, most people won't even go outside when it's that hot, let alone go run 60 miles an ultra marathon. So it's absolutely
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
was
I mean,
I was listening to Wright's podcast the other day, and he was kind of doing like a debrief on the race. For those people that don't know who Chad Wright is, he's a Navy veteran. He was a Navy SEAL, super famous. Motivational speaker. he runs ultra marathons. He's getting ready to do the world's longest kayak race here sometime this month. But he does a bunch of different ultras, and he was saying that this was probably the hottest race that he's done. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
That's pretty
it was no
intense.
joke. I mean,
Yeah.
it's no bad water, but it's still
it's
hot.
up there. It's still very intense.
It's all relative though, you know, if particularly for yourself, if the furthest you've gone is 30 miles in, I assume,
Yeah,
not too harsh of weather conditions, potentially, and then you go ahead and double that distance in Texas heat, that's going to be that's pretty extreme, you know.
yeah, yeah. It was no small feat for sure. I wish I could have went further, but I'm overall very happy with my outcome and how I placed and everything with the race.
Yeah. And going forwards, have you got any other particular goals in mind or anything you want to do next? Is this the end of it for you?
No, this is just the beginning. Um, I signed up for my next race. I think it was 2 days ago. So it's a probably going to be hotter than the Going More Ultra. So this one's located down here in Fort Worth, Texas. It's a 24-hour race. So there's no time slot that you have to, make a loop back in, but there's no shade on the course at all. It starts at 6 p.m. and it's a 1.25 mile loop. So it's going to be very repetitive, very boring. In the daytime, it's going to get extremely hot because it's July 25th. Usually the temperatures get up to triple digits. I think usually around like 115 is where it kind of averages. So it's going to be hot. It's going to be miserable. It's going to be a big suck fest. But I mean, that's what I want. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, so Peter's actually doing a 24-hour one tomorrow. It's not as hard as
Really?
yours by the sound of it, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I signed up for, well, I'm doing a 24-hour race tomorrow. So like yourself, it's not a backyard ultra where you have to do a loop every hour on the hour, but equally
Yeah.
it's still 24 hours of running. And I signed up for that about 4 hours ago, and it's tomorrow.
Nice.
So
Do you have any
we'll see.
time or what goal distance do you have? Do you have any?
Yeah, so I want to get 100 miles, and within
Nice.
doing
That's what I'm
so, yeah, so that's 20 laps of an 8K loop. It's sort of through the forest, through the woodlands. And if I can get 100 miles, that will be a new British record. It'll be the youngest Brit ever to do that, to get 100 miles
really.
run. Yeah, yeah. And anything over 120 kilometers, so about 75 miles, is a new British record,
Mhm.
which I'd be beating my own
Okay.
record because I hold the British record for
That's
the longest run
awesome.
by a teenager. So yeah, I'd say tomorrow, anything over 120K, perfect. Anything less than that is sort of going to have to take it as a training run, I suppose, for and when I do strive to get the 100 miles. And obviously, 100 miles is the ultimate goal. But on,
Exactly.
very short notice, we can only see if I can go one more.
Yeah. Well, I wish you the best of luck in that. Can't wait to hear how it turns out.
I appreciate it.
So, Dalton, you mentioned you were in the Navy. Did any of your naval experiences benefit you on your ultramarathon?
To be honest, no, not really. so in so I worked aviation. So my main job was to work on like the ejection seats on the F-18s. And with my command or like with the aviation in general, we really don't do a whole lot of PT. So we would maybe do it once, twice a year, and that's about it. It was all kind of like PT on your own. So it's not like I had any, I guess, rigorous training that was like intense or anything. Not like coming out of like a special operations unit, but um, I worked on the flight deck on aircraft carriers. I worked long days, so like I guess you could say I was like used to being or like working under stressful conditions and being like sleep deprived and still having to perform my duties. But other than that, like from a physical aspect, not really, not much.
And what made you want to transition from a job in the Navy to what it is you're doing now?
I was just ready to move on to something new, something different. I felt like the goals and visions that, myself and my family had did not necessarily align with the direction that the Navy, I guess, was bringing us. We had talked about transitioning out, moving down here to Texas and being closer to family. And, I'm pursuing a degree from TCU with, sorry, pursuing a degree at TCU with a finance with a concentration in real estate. So I plan on getting into the real estate market. I'm also finishing up my real estate license as well. So I just feel like for myself and my family, we'd be more happy this way rather than, either my wife or I having to leave on deployments constantly, being away from the kids and everything. So it was more of a choice for like our family and the future moving forward.
That makes sense. What got you into ultra running?
So to be honest, I started running um as like a hobby back in 2020. Before that, I would do like a few races, like a 5K here and there if it was for a good cause. But other than that, I didn't run much. I started running 2020 when COVID, took over the world. All the gyms out in California were shut down, and I gained a little bit of extra midsection fat that I didn't like. So I was like, well, the only thing I can really do is run. So started running, and kind of started falling in love with it. I noticed like the results came really quick. Uh, which before I used to always do like just weightlifting, bodybuilding style workouts. And it takes, weeks, months to see, any sort of progress. Sometimes even years, but with running, I feel like you can start seeing progress in as little as a few weeks. Whether it's like your heart rate staying lower, your speed increasing. So like I guess I just fell in love with how quick the progress came. And it was just something I wanted to keep pursuing. I ended up doing like my first half marathon. I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks after I started running. And then it was like 2 weeks later, I did another one. And then I started getting some overuse injuries. So I had to kind of took like 2 years off almost, not necessarily from running, but I was kind of running on and off, trying to fix these issues with my legs and my Achilles, my knees, and all that. And I finally had a good year of training last year where I didn't really have any flare ups with these injuries and did the Fort Worth Marathon in November. Um, didn't really perform how I wanted to. I ran much slower. I ended up getting a stress fracture in my right foot. So I was in a walking boot for a little bit from that. But other than that, like none of my injuries really flared up. So uh, still saw it, I guess, as a win. And then when I heard about the Going More Ultra, I was like, well, I'll put my name into the lottery and see if I get picked up. And I guess from that race, I kind of fell in love with the idea of ultra running between the race itself and the prep leading up to it. I enjoy the thought of running really long distance and not necessarily having to run as fast as I can, like not trying to, qualify for Boston or anything.
So you mentioned when you first started running, things were coming very quick to you. You noticed improvements in your health. You went relatively straight into doing some pretty decent distances, half marathons, etc. Obviously, you had certain setbacks of injury, and then to progress to where you are now, it took a lot longer to get there. What made you want to stick with it and consistently pursue running when actually things started to slow down? What made you stick to it when it wasn't easy and it wasn't quick?
Um, I don't really know. I think whenever I go out like on my runs, like I never listen to music or audiobooks or podcasts or anything. I just run in silence. A lot of people call me a psycho for that, but that's just what I find the most enjoyable for me. I feel like it's one of the only times primarily where I can think clearly and have like just the silence where it's just me, my footsteps, the road, birds chirping, crickets going, it's just I feel like I have the best mental clarity during my runs, after my runs, and I feel like some of my best ideas and thoughts come out when I'm running. So it's just I think the mental clarity of it.
I can definitely relate to that. And I think when you're running, sometimes it's nice to have that sort of clear headspace and you can just not focus on anything. You know, at the most, you're focusing potentially on your breathing, you know, and yeah, I completely agree with you that. I mean, even tomorrow going into my 24-hour, I don't really intend on listening to music for at least the first half. And then when things get tough, maybe a bit of David Goggins will come out, but we'll see. So,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I suppose I think it's very interesting. It's very interesting. But what would your advice be to people who are starting to run and they find it difficult and all they can do is sort of listening to music and they're trying to find all these different distractions to take away from the fact that what they're doing is very difficult. It's not easy, and they want to distract themselves potentially with music and their phone whilst they're doing it. What would you say? What advice would you give to someone who's finding it difficult but wants to get into running?
Um, that kind of reminds me. I'm reading Nick Bear's newest book, Going More. He gave it out to all of us runners at the race. About halfway through, but in that book, he talks about being present in the mile that you're in. So, this even goes for you, like with your 24-hour race tomorrow. Like not necessarily hyper fixating on the crossing the finish line at like 100 miles or like reaching that distance, but actually being present in, mile 2, mile 20, 30, so on. So like trying to, I guess it's more, or it's all about like embracing the journey of it,
Mm.
like distractions, like it helps in certain ways, I guess. Like it can take your mind off it to where it's just like your body has to perform. But at the same time, like, I guess if you keep distracting yourself, you're not gonna be building up, like, that mental, like, resiliency. So, like, whenever you do enter that pain cave, because depending on what distance you're going or how fast you're running, like, that pain cave will come out, but it'll come out at some point, So that's when you have to have that mental resiliency, that mental toughness in order to find your way out of it and to keep pushing on.
Yeah, you must have pretty incredible mental resilience. If the longest you'd run before this race was 30 miles, you said. So to go
Yeah.
an extra 30 miles to double that is pretty crazy. Where do you think that mental resilience comes from?
So I'm gonna get into the story about, like, my brother here. Unfortunately, on March 13th, 2024, he took his life. My brother Dylan, he battled with his mental demons for a long time. Um, and he struggled with alcoholism, being an alcoholic, substance abuse, and finally his demons won. Uh, and that shit wrecked me, to be honest. It was, some of the hardest moments in my life that I had to get through. And, in that time frame, I didn't know how I was going to manage to keep going, keep fighting. Um, a few weeks following his funeral, I decided I wanted to start trying to raise awareness for mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention efforts. So I started looking into starting a business called Iron Mind Events to raise awareness for these causes. Pardon me. Um, but we plan on hosting walks and races to raise awareness. We haven't hosted our actual first race just yet, but I'm in the works on that, trying to finalize everything. Uh, but I think a lot of my mental toughness comes from carrying my brother's memory with me, like as I run. And I guess like the way I see it is like if he had to struggle and go through all of his mental battles, like the least I can do is put myself through some tough races and put myself in these shitty situations where I have to struggle for a few miles just to, kind of raise awareness and keep his memory alive with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say within a lot of ultra endurance athletes, there's always that initial event or certain set events that sort of take them down that path. When you're faced with that decision of you can go two ways when things like this happen, and obviously your brother sadly, you losing him, you can go down a right path or you can go down the wrong path. And it's that decision, that critical decision that you make. And thankfully, you've chosen to go down a very remarkable path with the running you're doing, the foundations that you're trying to set for yourself to keep your head above water and do good for other people. You know, I think that's very honorable.
Well, thank you.
Do you mind explaining a bit what Iron Mind is to the listeners?
Yeah. So, Iron Mind Events, it's the business that, I started with my family to raise awareness for these issues like mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention. Uh, we hosted our first walk. We did a walk in my hometown heading down Main Street, where everyone was basically holding hands. We just walked in silence, and we raised money for our local suicide prevention foundation through, or yeah, we raised money for our local suicide prevention foundation through that walk, and we raised a lot of awareness from our town and a lot of the other surrounding towns. So the goal, the vision that I have for this business is to get into hosting like races. I want to start out with like 5K, 10K distances, and support different charities and nonprofit organizations that align with the visions that I have for the business to raise awareness for these issues. Um, and eventually, who knows, maybe I'd like to get into hosting like some ultras or marathon distance races. So, but at the end of the day, I guess it's all about raising awareness for these tough topics that I guess plague our world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing that you've um, had this awful thing happen. You're like trying to help other people with it. I think that's really great.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, most people would, you know, you'd be thinking you would be the one where people would be trying to help, but you're trying to help other people, and you talk about even in the future, as time goes on, continually striving to help more people and, raise more awareness, it's great. What what drives you day to day to consistently get up? Is it your the passing of your brother, or is there any how do you source your inspiration? What fuels you day to day?
Um, definitely like losing my brother gives me that extra competitive edge, I guess, that extra drive to try to reach these masses of people to raise awareness. But I think overall, like I just have always set very high goals for myself. And I think setting those high goals, even though some people may believe that they're out of reach, I think that's what ultimately keeps me going, keeps me I guess self motivated. Because I mean, we can find motivation from a bunch of different sources like different podcasts or motivational videos, but those are just temporary. I think you need to have that consistent source of like self motivation, that self drive to be able to show up consistently, like on a daily basis, and you know put in the work to achieve these high goals that you set for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is amazing, especially to go like ultra running. And you're doing the Texas 24 hours, is that right?
Yeah, it's the Texas Endurance Run, I believe it's called.
Yeah. What's your goal for that race?
100 miles, 100 or
Yeah.
nothing. That's the goal.
How are your preparations going for, achieving that? Because obviously, like we've already said a few times, you went from 30 miles to 60 miles, and it's a big jump to 100 miles. We can both
It
appreciate
is.
that for sure. How are you
Yeah.
feeling about that?
Uh, I feel good. I mean, this is my first, I guess, week in prep again, but it's I don't know. I'm still kind of slowly recovering from the Going More Ultra that was 2 weeks ago. So I kind of took all of last week as like a week to recover, do some like light recovery runs. And then this week I'm back into running about 6 to 8 miles a day. I'm at, I think, 32 miles so far this week. But something I need to focus more on this prep is more time on my feet. So I'm including more like evening walks, like with the dog and stuff like that. So just trying to get on my feet more. I plan on ramping my miles up a little bit quicker, since they were already relatively pretty high before the Going More Ultra. So I think I just need to continue ramping my weekly miles up and focus on increasing my time on my feet in order to hit this distance.
Definitely, definitely. And what was your weekly mileage? How did it look like for you to prepare? Because a lot of people out there, they may not run, or they may run a 5K or 10K, or some of the shorter distances. You talked. It wasn't too long ago that you were in that position. How do you take that step up, and how do you consistently try and improve now to get 100 miles?
Yeah, so I follow the 80-20 rule primarily. So for those people that don't know what it is, it's 80% of your runs should be done in the zone 2, meaning like a light, easy pace, something where you would feel comfortable holding like a conversation while running in. The other 20% of your run should be done like as speed work. So whether it's like 400-meter sprints around the track, 800 meters, or tempo run where you're trying to hold like a consistent pace throughout the duration of your run. So I follow the 80-20 rule, and then I also increase my mileage weekly by no more than 10%. So I kind of do a little bit of, I guess, forward planning and backward planning. Like I know when the race is. So like I'm like, okay, I need to start tapering like 10 days before. So I know like that week or the week before that is gonna be like my peak week, meaning that's where I hit like the highest volume during my prep. So I'll figure out what I want my peak week to be or to look like, and then I kind of just go from where I'm at currently, weekly mileage wise, and I just add 10% each week until I get to that peak week and then the taper. So I hope that
Nice.
answers it.
Did you yours did the BPN Go1? There were some pretty big ultra marathon names there. Did you pick up
Yeah.
anything from those guys? Like, I guess you got talking to a couple of them. Did you learn anything that you're going to
Yeah.
take into your next races?
Yeah. So I spent a good few loops, probably maybe 15, 20 miles or so running with Lucy Davis and Mitch Amons. And, Mitch, he gave me some soup when I was like really hurting. I think this was around mile 20. So he told me, like, dude, I got some soup. Come by my tent whenever you get back from this loop and I'll get you some. And so, like, just having like, it was just Campbell's chicken noodle soup. And I just popped the lid on it and just drank it right out of the can. But it brought me back to life, honestly. There's a ridiculous amount of sodium in there, some good carbs and everything, and it really was, like, kind of a turning point because I was deep in that pain cave at that point, and just that soup and all that sodium because I was having a tough time stomaching food, and even, like, my electrolytes, it was a struggle, just the heat was intense. It really messed my stomach up trying to eat and drink all these fluids, so that soup kind of it was light, easy on my stomach, and it's definitely something that I'm gonna be incorporating throughout my prep now, and definitely gonna be in, like, my, race day nutrition strategy.
For such a hot run, for UK listeners, that's about 40-degree heat. What's your nutrition like? How are you fueling to do this?
So, I was planning everything went out the window, like, I was not able to follow my nutrition plan at all,
Yeah.
but the original plan was, to carb load a few days prior. So, I started consuming a bunch of carbs, had, nice pasta and bread from an Italian restaurant the night before. The morning of the race, we went and got some donuts, and we just waited for the race to start. I ate a lot of, like, the honey stingers, a lot of these, Rice Krispies, had a bunch of, like, Go Gels out there. Um, Going More's or, BPN's, G1M Sport, that has, I think, 20 grams of carbs per scoop, so I was having, like, 2 scoops per hour. Just trying to eat and drink enough fluids. I was mainly focusing on carbs, the carb sources. So I was eating like peanut butter jelly sandwiches. I'd have like tortillas, like with banana, peanut butter, and honey, kind of like wrapped up in a burrito. Um, just kind of anything that was carb based that I could
Yeah.
stomach. So had a lot of different options out there, and unfortunately, I hit a point where I couldn't eat anything. So I went like probably like 2, 3 hours with no food. I wasn't able to drink any of my electrolytes, and it hurt. It got me deep in that pain cave.
Did you get to try? I've seen there's a new product being released by BPN. Could you tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that? Because it's sort of a bit mysterious at the moment. It hasn't been released.
So it just was released, I think, a few days ago, actually. But they did have that down there. It's called G1M Sport Plus, and it is a fantastic supplement. It's essentially very similar to the original G1M Sport, with the carbs and the electrolytes with it, but it also has caffeine. So it was I finally had some after I ate the soup. I was able to start stomaching more fluids and food, and that's when I had some of the G1M Sport Plus, and it had me feeling really good for a good amount of loops. I really think that supplement has helped me, push that additional like 40 miles from when I thought I was gonna quit.
That's a hell of an endorsement for BPN, I have to say. You're not being paid.
No, I wish.
Well, I mean, we might have to get some in the UK and try that. If BPM want to send us some, we'll give it a little review. We can work something out. Just send us a DM. We'll sort it out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How was running through the night? Did you see? You started at 6 p.m., right? So I'm guessing
So
you.
this one started at noon.
Oh,
So
oh
yeah, we
wow,
started right in the heat.
that's even
So
worse.
yeah. So whenever night came, it was kind of a relief, honestly. It was a completely different race. The headlamps came out. Luckily the trail was it was a very well maintained course. So there wasn't very many switchbacks or, like if you're running, having to zigzag and stuff through the
Yeah,
loops or the trail. So there wasn't very many of those, and there wasn't very many hills to climb. It was a primarily flat course. So navigating it with the headlamp was very easy, compared to like some of my other trail runs I've done. But no, it was nice. The temperatures cooled off. We didn't have that sun beating on us. Um, and then I just finally reached a point. I think it was around four, 3 or 4 in the morning, around that time frame. That I was really sleep deprived and really hurting, and I started getting some hallucinations during the race.
Tell us about those. We want to hear about the hallucinations.
Yeah, so, they're actually pretty scary. I hear some people, they'll say, like, they had, some pretty cool hallucinations. Mine were pretty scary. So, I was running through this one section. I was running all by myself at this point. I think we were down to about 37 runners, and I see this, like, figure, this, like, white, like, ghostly white, pale figure, like, just slowly walking. It's, like, hunched over, and it's just walking right in front of the trail, and this thing had to have been, like, 7 or 8 feet tall. And it scared me, like, I literally jumped, I, like, screamed a little bit, and I was like, "Okay, I think I'm starting to see things." So I kept running, it was maybe, like, 100 yards later, I saw another one, it was, like, standing in the bushes, and it was just pointing at me as I was running, it was just following me like this, and its fingers were probably, like, this long, they were, like, 12 inches long, it was terrifying. And then I think it was maybe a few feet past that, there was another one, it was just kinda sitting in, like, fetal position, like, rocking back and forth, crying, like, hysterically.
I bet when you
So
were
it's
like
sca
sleep deprived, tired, like hungry, exhausted, I bet that freaks the hell out of you.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I called my wife and, she was doing a fantastic job, trying to keep me level-headed and grounded. So, like, I ended up I was on FaceTime with her for the rest of that loop, which I think at that point it had like 3 more miles to go. And I thought for sure, I was like, there's no way I'm making the cutoff time for this. I was walking a good amount of it. My feet were in so much pain. And she's like, no, you have to finish this loop. Like, you have to get back on time. I'm like, there's no way. It's impossible. I ended up making it back on loop 14 with, I think it was like 13 seconds remaining. And then I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm ready to quit. I was like, this is it. I left it all out there. I got nothing left in the tank. And then my crew members literally pushed me through the starting line to start lap 15.
And when you set out on lap 15, sort of describe us, run us through that. Did you run it? Did you walk it? What happened?
I walked. I walked almost all of it. Actually, I didn't even finish lap 15. So the way the course was set up, like you kind of run in like a circle almost, and then you run like a bigger circle and it connects back into like the same one at some point. So like I finished that first initial circle, which you run by the like the start finish line again. And by the time I got there, I looked at the clock and I knew like it took me like it was like 37 minutes to get there, and I was only like 1.8 miles in, so I knew I had another 2.4 miles to go in 14 minutes or 24 minutes. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, my feet hurt, my legs aren't working. I'm still hallucinating. I'm hearing sounds and stuff now. So I ended up bringing it in at that point. And that's when I rang the bell.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now that was 60 miles, hallucinations, big man, big fingers, all of that. And now you want to go for 100. You've got to run us through the mindset behind wanting to do that, because most people, they see Slender Man, they're out. Whereas you're like, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
call it a day, and then we're going again. Like, come on, you got to explain this a little bit.
Um, I don't know. Like I got the experience. I got like the taste of actually doing an official ultra. I loved it. Um, I feel like I learned a lot about myself from that race and where areas that I need to improve on moving forward. Um, I learned stuff about like, the nutrition planning and um, just a bunch of different stuff that I can implement into my training to be more intentional moving forward. So, uh, I think logically, since I essentially just fell short of 100K. I think the next step is 100 miles, and that's what Matt Choi. I was talking with him after, or like the next morning after I DNF'd, and he was even telling me, he's like, "Dude, you got to go for 100 now." He's like, "It's honestly like the next step," and I was like, "Damn, you're right, man." I was like, "I do." So I came back, enjoyed like that first week of like recovering, and I realized how much I missed the prep leading up to the race. And I shared something on my Instagram last week, kind of explaining why I personally think a lot of runners will sign up for a new race shortly after finishing one. And, we put in a lot of time, effort, blood, sweat, tears into the prep. And we show up on race day, we perform, we give it our all, and then it's just over. It's just gone. And it's like, okay, what am I going to do now? And,
Yeah.
some people are, having like some downtime and just being like an off season and just running with no real distance or goals and like big goals in mind or races planned, but I think I'm at a point in my running career where I want to keep pushing. I want to keep growing at a fast pace. So I think just signing up for another race and staying committed and everything was just gonna keep pushing me forward and driving me closer to this goal.
Do you think that the main reason you do what you do and you continue to progress is for the end goal of achieving that distance, or is it the journey for you? Which one?
I think it's more so of the journey. Because I know once I hit that 100-mile distance, like I'm gonna find something else to do, Like I already have like my next race even after that one planned out. It's gonna be another last man standing race. So um yeah, so I don't know. I think it's more so of the journey and learning more about myself and those dark moments when everything hurts and, like my mind is telling me that it's time to quit. And I'm like, no, I can keep pushing. Like, just breaking through those mental barriers that we place on ourselves. Um, and I think having that consistent work ethic and showing up every day to put in the work, even if it's not like the sexy work, like it sucks sometimes, like having to wake up early to go run 10, 15, 20 miles before like the rest of the city even wakes up. But yeah, I don't know. I think just having these races planned out and everything, it gives me something to push for, something to strive for. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ask 3 set questions to all of our guests. So first one is, who inspired you?
So when I first started running, one of my best friends from the Navy, he was just getting into running as well. He was much further along his running journey than I was, but his name's Andrew Larson. He's a coach down out of, oh, where does he live? He lives down in South Texas, out of Brownsville. And, he was giving me a bunch of advice and tips and tricks and how to improve my pace and to increase my aerobic base and my running form. Like I would send him videos of me running and he would critique my form and tell me things I needed to fix. So he was a big inspiration for me starting, and he was the one who actually introduced me to Nick Bear. So following Nick through all of these big races that he's done, like there was marathon preps and his ultras and even his Ironman preps, like watching him and the team that he has built with all the athletes he's signed and everything, just the entire team has been so inspirational. And it's just kind of in the beginning, it gave me that source of external motivation, um, which I don't necessarily feel like I need to rely on anymore, but I definitely think it helped in the early stages of my running career.
Nice. So our next question is, if your younger self could see you now, what would they say?
Oh man, you'd probably ask if I was okay mentally. 'Cause I mean, running these distances is never something that I wanted to do. I was never like a natural born runner or anything like that. Like I'd run playing sports and stuff, but that was about it really. So, I think my younger self would be kind of shocked, but also proud of the life that I built, the family that we have, everything that's come with it.
So yeah, our third question is a message for the listeners.
A message for the listeners. Um, Set high goals. It's okay to set some goals that people may deem unrealistic. Uh, as long as you show up, you put in that work, you have something to strive towards, having that consistent work ethic, showing up every day and doing what you have to do. It will not only push you further in a world of sports and fitness, but also in life. If you can show up and commit to something that sucks, like running every single day or prepping for these like crazy long races, like you can show up and put in that work, that shows or that speaks a level to your character. If you can do this thing that sucks for so long, for months and years, I think that can evenly or equally transition into your work, your family, and just your overall life as well.
Dalton, thank you so much for coming on. Very inspiring. It's going to make a great episode. And I'm sure all the listeners at home are going to be really inspired by what you've got to say. So thank you for coming on.
We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
First, thanks for having me, guys.